Would the headline be Kevin Spacey says he lives life as a gay man? I mean, is that a cover-up of epic media proportions or what? Here's the headline from ABC News. I choose to live as a gay man. Kevin Spacey comes out in emotional tweet. Emotional tweet, for God's sake. He came out because a guy accused him of trying to molest him when he was 14 years old. This is insanity. Now, there are many media outlets that are reporting both facts, right? They're saying things like, after accusations of sexual molestation, Spacey comes out as gay, right? But again, if the punchline is Spacey comes out as gay, you're missing the punchline. The punchline is Spacey trying to fob off molesting a 14-year-old by saying he was drunk at the time. I don't remember everybody being, quite so accepting of Roman Polanski raping a 13-year-old girl. Right? Maybe he should have just raped a 13-year-old boy and then said that he was drunk at the time and gay. I mean, this is insanity. This is fully insanity. And again, this is not good for the LGBT community, for people who are saying, well, we have to be protective of his rights as a gay man. No, you have to be protective of the rights of children, and gay people understand this. I mean, that's been the response that I've seen from the LGBT folks that I know online. Right? The gay people I'm seeing online are saying, this is insane. How could Kevin Spacey say such a thing? How could Kevin Spacey undercut our entire case like this? The media cheering Spacey is just another indicator that the media are really disgusting, and their leftism overcomes even their most basic sort of moral stances. Okay, time for some things I like. We'll start from Paul Manafort. We'll start with Paul Manafort because this was the expectation last week. So as you recall, on Friday, it was announced that the special counsel was going to drop indictments on Monday. I always love when they leave cliffhangers at the end of a season. It's really exciting that way. So they left a cliffhanger on Friday. Who would be indicted? And everybody sort of assumed it'll be Manafort, right? It's got to be Manafort because Manafort has been known to be dirty for years and years and years. He was very, very tied in with the Republican establishment. He really was. He was close to the Bushes. He was close to the Republican National Committee. He was very close to a lot of people in Republican halls of power. I know because I had heard of him sort of in those circles. But Manafort had also been widely known since really 2012 to sort of be a dirty character who was in with the Ukrainian government, who's basically doing lobbying work allegedly on behalf of the Ukrainian government, which is a Russian front puppet state, basically run by a guy named Viktor Yanukovych. So the allegations in the indictment, the left was hoping that the indictment would say Paul Manafort traded money, the Russians paid him in order so that he would set up collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. This is what the Democrats and the media wanted. They wanted Paul Manafort to be the go-between for the supposed Russian collusion that would show that Hillary Clinton actually won the election, except for those scheming, evil Russians. Okay, that's not what the indictment says. So the indictment is 12 counts, and basically the entire thing is about how Paul Manafort is a corrupt creep who was taking money from this Ukrainian party that was basically a front group for Russia and then laundering it. That's pretty much the entire thing. There's nothing, Trump is not mentioned once in the indictment. The Trump campaign is not mentioned one time in the indictment. Virtually all of the bad acts happened in 2014 and before. In 2014 is when Yanukovych left office, so that cut off sort of the money train for Manafort. And then apparently he was still fibbing about it and doing some money laundering afterward, but most of the bad activity with regard to Russia, at least as the indictment says, stopped in 2014. So that's the good news for Trump. Nothing in the indictment suggests collusion between Trump and the Russian government. And that's exactly what the left wanted it to say. Here's the bad news for Trump. Manafort was a crappy pick. Everyone knew it at the time. When Manafort was picked, people were immediately saying, this guy is probably going to end up in jail. Bad move by President Trump. But it shows you the level of chaos that sort of predominated in the Trump campaign. In all likelihood, somebody just went to Trump and said, listen, none of the big campaign managers will work for you. Here's this guy who's super connected. He has good business connections. Paul Manafort, hire him. And so Trump went ahead and hired him. It's probably that simple. And that sort of chaos inside the Trump administration also, in my opinion, could easily explain the George Papadopoulos routine that we're going to talk about in just a little while. So to finish up with Manafort, basically the indictment alleges that Manafort and Richard Gates III, his right hand, worked as, quote, unregistered agents of the government of Ukraine, generated tens of millions of dollars in income as a result of the Ukraine work. They then laundered the money through scores of U.S. and foreign corporations, partnerships, and bank accounts. Manafort and Gates allegedly did not register as foreign agents, which they apparently were, and then Manafort used his hidden overseas wealth to enjoy a lavish lifestyle in the United States without paying taxes on income. So basically they're getting him for all the financial impropriety. Between, in, or around 2008 and 2017, both dates being approximate and inclusive according to the indictment, Manafort and Gates devised and intended to devise and executed and attempted to execute a scheme and artifice to defraud, to obtain money and property by means of false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises from the United States Bank and other financial institutions. Allegedly, Manafort wired millions through other companies for purposes of laundering. So if you saw Ozark, basically, you are a bigot. Are you a straight man who only wants to have sex with women? Are you a gay man who only wants to have sex with men? Are you a bisexual man who wants to have sex with people of both sexes, but only if they're good looking? Are you asexual? You're a bigot. According to Samantha Allen of the Daily Beast, it is, quote, deeply disappointing but unsurprising that under 20% of Americans in a recent survey said they would be open to having sex with a transgender person. That's because, she says, quote, cultural acceptance has tended to lag behind formal recognition. It turns out that according to the left, all sexual behavior is malleable and based largely on social structures that have been implemented by the patriarchy. Men and women don't exist, but for their self-perception. We know that a man can be a woman, and a woman can be a man, regardless of biology. That's why Caitlyn Jenner isn't just a man with a mental disorder and some plastic surgery and hormone injections. Caitlyn Jenner is as much of a woman as Michelle Obama. The left reasons that if a man can be a woman, then a man who only wants to have sex with biological women must be a bigot. His desires have been wrongly defined by a society that restricted the definition of womanhood to, like women. If only men had been exposed to the deeper truth of gender early, if only they'd known that some women have male genitalia, then perhaps they'd be willing to have sex with biological men who are actually women. The same holds true with regard to homosexuals, of course. If a woman is a lesbian, it's discriminatory of her to not want to have sex with a man who identifies as a woman. Her desires have also been shaped by her environment, and her environment has drawn a stark, but wrong, oh ever so wrong, contrast between biological men and biological women. If all of this sounds insane, that's because it's totally crazy. Straight men are attracted to women, not men who identify as women. Straight women are attracted to biological men. As a general rule, homosexuals are attracted to members of the same biological sex. Attempting to pretend away reality does not change that reality. But the left is plagued by two myths that lie in direct opposition to one another. The first, all human behavior can be changed by changing society at large. The second, all human behavior is innate and unchanging. Under the first myth, if we just train people that men and women are the same and that even their genitals don't provide a meaningful difference, men will begin having sex with transgender women, and women will begin having sex with transgender men. Under the second myth, however, transgender identity itself is immutable and unchanging, as is homosexuality and heterosexuality. This provides an unanswerable conundrum for transgender advocates. How can they get people to accept transgender people sexually when people's sexuality is supposedly unchanging? So the left merely ignores the problem and papers it over with the word bigot. Reality isn't bigotry. People are attracted to people they're attracted to. There is a biological component to that, as well as a cultural component, but ignoring biology in favor of culture is idiotic, and ignoring culture in favor of biology is ignorant. They both play a part. The suggestion that discriminatory nastiness is at the root of perfectly logical biological desire for people to have sex with members of the opposite biological sex is merely a slur, a crutch to cover up the illogic of the far left when it comes to both gender and